What's up, everybody? Welcome to Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
All right, I'm Lakeena McGee. You can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter, at Keena_McGee on the Instagram.
You can follow me, Sidney Brown, aka Sid the Kid, on Twitter and Instagram at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80 for both Twitter and Instagram. And also, we want to take this time, since it's Juneteenth weekend 2020, to say happy Juneteenth to everybody that's listening and watching us via Zoom. So we're commemorating this holiday, and we're going to this live post. I'm sorry, so I just got a breaking news here. So we're going to Cameron Smith, who was supposed to be on with us this hour, will not join us today. We'll reschedule him for down the road. So he had something behind the scenes to take care of. So we're carry on from there.
It's
So
okay.
Lakeena, let's take it away. Let's start into some NBA. We know last week that the players had a virtual Zoom call last week. LeBron James had a call with a group of his friends and players. Kyrie Irving of the Brooklyn Nets had a call with a few of his guys. And it seems like to me, reading and hearing stuff, that the players that were on the call with LeBron, they were concerned about the health concerns and the safety protocols about the bowl that they're going to play in Orlando starting on July 31st. And Kyrie Irving said that to his guys that it's not the time to play basketball right now because of what's going on with the racial injustice in our country after the effects of the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. So to me, I know Kyrie means well. We all know that he has his own personality. He's in his own space, but I think that, if you believe the reports, he's out of line here trying to pick beefs with LeBron James. Right now, this is not the time to do that. It's time to be unified. And I think he has the right idea, but I think he's going by it the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, let's remember he thinks the Earth is flat. We don't forget those comments he made a few years back. Now, he has since walked back those comments, but I feel like, look, I understand where Kyrie means well. He's trying to, feels that maybe that he doesn't want that to the social injustice and everything else that's been happening go to fall by the wayside. But at the same time, though, I think people want escapism. If I can turn it that right, I mean, people kind of want to escape from all the news that's been going on the last month, couple of months, if you count the COVID pandemic. So, I mean, and let's remember too, he's been hurt most of the year, so
Mm-hmm.
that I think that might be another reason why he probably doesn't want to play. Again, that's just I'm just I'm not saying that he's trying to fake it or anything, but I feel like there's maybe more to this. And look, Florida just had like some of their like rising cases of COVID, so they have their own issues to deal with there. So those concerns, I think. I understand Kyrie's concerns, but I think at the same time, I think his concerns are kind of misconstrued, if you will.
Yeah, you can say that to an extent. And of course, the NBA had the rule that no injured players will be allowed to participate in this because they're trying to keep the number of players and coaches to a minimum because of practices social distancing, and they don't want any of their players and members of the franchise or the staff to catch the virus. So from that standpoint, I understand from where the league is coming from. If Kyrie Irving is upset because of that, then so be it. Some things that you just have to take with a grain of salt and deal with it. So, and like you said, this is not the time to do petty stuff and have your own personal agenda. You're supposed to be all for one on one accord, just having your own separate agenda. It just looks bad. The optics of it just looks very bad.
Yeah, Dwight Howard kind of echoes Kyrie's sentiment, but at the same time, though, Dwight Howard wasn't really playing much for the Lakers. So it's sort of like it's kind of all twofold. It's exactly okay. Who's being really genuine that that these concerns, or they're just being petty because their team's not really going to contend, or they're not haven't really been playing much. So that's why there's these reservations. So who knows? I mean, LeBron hasn't really said much. I think he kind of just wants to like everyone else have their say before he says something. Maybe that's why we haven't heard from
Mm-hmm.
Kawhi. CP3 is kind of trying to stay neutral here because him and Michelle Roberts have been trying to trying to be accommodating to some players' concerns, but at the same time, though, I think there's a lot of players that actually want to play. They want to get back out there.
Hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see, once they set how they peel the layers here with all this, because I feel like maybe we saw like the various divisions and how like all these teams are going to be sorted out in different divisions and such. So I wonder how they're going to do this, and it'll be interesting to see how all this is going to play out, because I feel like at this point with everything that's been going on, I think people want to escape. It's not this not going to change. I'm actually with Stephen A here, and you know how I rarely agree with him, but but this is actually one time where I actually agree with him. Like, listen, none of that's going to change. I mean, you're still going to be fine. There's going to be a lot of racial injustice going on. The COVID's still going to be happening. But I think people want to have a good 2-3 hours to kind of like step away from it and kind of enjoy some entertainment, because I think people need something to kind of distract. In some cases, I think distraction is a good thing. And I think sports always has been that distraction for people, and people haven't had that these last few months. So look, like listen, it's great we're talking about all this stuff that's been going on, but at the same time, though, I think people need to kind of like be mindless, just have like some mindless entertainment to kind of like just get their like minds and their psyche sort of right.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's not like the NBA players won't say something about what's going on right now. We all know that the NBA is a players' league, and they're going to find a way to get the word out. Now, like a few years ago when they wore the shirts that I Can't Breathe, of course, with Derrick Rose while he was still here in Chicago, LeBron James when he was with Cleveland, he wore the late Kobe Bryant wore the shirt as well, along with several other players about 4 or 5 years ago. And so that's how they got out the word. They're going to find different ways and creative measures to get out the word this time. I think it's going to be more just about T-shirts. And you hear about action plans and action task force that's forming right now. So we all know in the news cycle with the protests and things along that line, it's not going to dominate the number one story on your local or national news. That's just the way the news business works. But there's still work to be done in forming these task force and doing the work behind these things. That's what it's really about. I, Not to say that because you're not putting it on front, it doesn't mean that people behind the scenes are not doing the work. It does not mean that people still do not care. Like you said, Lakeena, sports has been the most group. How can I find the words to say this? It's been the best and the most entity that has risen from the ashes to help bring people together. And yes, and also bring issues to the forefront where normal people won't talk about them. So that's what protest is all about, is bringing awareness to a problem and then what you're going to do about it afterwards. So with the NBA players getting back on the court, not just going to say something about it, they're actually going to do something about it. We all need to do something about it, not just wait for celebrities and entertainers to do stuff for us. So for people to think that when the NBA resumes later next month, that the message is going to go away, that's just not the case. I think they're going to have more creative ways to get the message out and have people help them to form this coalition. But if people think it's just going to disappear into the abyss, you're sadly mistaken.
Yeah, and I think that's what. Listen, I understand that Kyrie feels as though it's going to disappear. It's not.
Hmm.
Listen, all these sports leagues have their own kind of initiatives. MLS just announced that some of their, they're forming a coalition with some of their, top black players, and to kind of, start with the diversity. The NHL just announced a couple of days ago they're going to do something similar with some of their best, black players: Wayne Simmons, PK Subban, his brother Malcolm, who plays for the Blackhawks. So listen, none of this stuff. Look, nothing is good. Listen, I think this time, because of the fact that there has been a lot of distraction with sports, I think people are waking up and realizing what's been happening and what's been going on, and what, Juneteenth, today being Juneteenth, what,
Hmm.
still black. And I think to some extent our brown brothers and sisters have been struggling as well. So I think we need to kind of like, okay, listen, this is not going to go away. Okay, yeah, you play, basketball or play baseball, hockey, football, whatever sport for like the next 2.5, 3 hours. That's not gonna listen. Like I said, racial injustice is gonna go away. There's still gonna be racism. The COVID's still around. I think people just want to kind of get their minds off it and just say, just breathe and be entertained and maybe even have a little bit of a laugh.
Yeah, like you said, getting your mind off of it is one thing. But if you think that this is going to go away, you're sadly mistaken. All these issues have been around way before we were born, and it didn't go away. So, of course, in a perfect world, we wish we wouldn't have to deal with these issues, but that's just not the case. We all have to wake up to reality now. I wish we were talking about games on the field. Yes, but some things are more important than others. And like we said before, we're going to get back to the games eventually, but this is not going to go away. It may go away on the national news level as far as being the number one news story. Of course, you're going to talk about the presidential election. You're going to talk about other issues that's going on in our country with the unemployment and things along that line. But racial injustice is still an issue that we all are going to have to fight. And so that's not going to go away anytime soon. Change takes time. If anybody that knows me personally, that I have a big impatient bone in my body. But I guess since I've gotten old, is like, some things you just cannot control. If some things are way beyond your control, things doesn't happen overnight. You had to have a real good plan and have an extra plan and carry these tasks out. So change does take time, but as long as we are working towards that, we should be fine. It's not going to be easy, but we should be fine. And with the athletes going back on the field to play, it's not going to be forgotten because we all know that the players, in particular basketball players, will find a way to get the message out and express themselves.
Yeah, whether it's, t-shirts or armbands or, have something on they may have something on their jersey, something like that. We saw that
Mm-hmm.
with the kilt over we've seen over in Europe with all their, all their leagues, for the Premier League that just came back a
Yeah.
couple of days ago, they had their, Black Lives Matter, the back of their kilts. So, and also Bundesliga's been doing it too these last few weeks they've been around. You saw a couple of players in the PGA, have something on their, golf bag. So, the message is there, and I think it's resonating. I think, Pete, like you said, I think we need to kind of be a little less patient. I think that's been the problem with our society, is that we're so impatient nowadays.
Patient.
Especially,
Yeah.
you can get something like, you get news like that, you can get like other stuff, just like that. But stuff like this, I mean, it takes time and it takes voting. That's another thing that I'm gonna keep telling people. So I think people just, I think, like I said, I think Kyrie's sentiment is sort of admirable, but I think, like I said, I think it's still kind of misconstrued on his part. I'm just saying. So, and it's sort of like the way it's set up is that if you don't play, you don't get paid. So that's money is the root of all this here. So I think that's going to be the thing that's going to kind of change some minds, however they feel about whatever's been going on. Like, Sid?
Yeah. I'll just wait for you to move on to the next topic.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had something else to add, but
No. I'm good. I'm good. I just
okay,
want you to bring to the next topic.
okay, live Zoom, folks.
Yeah.
Nothing like it. But okay, let's talk about the ever-changing ping pong with the MLB and the MLB Players Association, because the latest proposal, I think that was just, I guess that was rejected, was like 70 games and like 90% prorated salaries and such. But then like there's been other proposals like 80 games. We thought that maybe they might be we might be making some inroads here, but it turns out that we're right back where we started. What the heck is going on? Here's Sid.
Didn't I tell you last week on our last podcast that this was going to happen? I know we all want baseball to come back, but we had WGN Radio's sports radio anchor and reporter Kevin Powell on in our last podcast, and he said that he was expecting the deal to strike. The news that came out early this week, I retweeted Bob Nightingale's tweet about the latest proposal. It sounded like that we were going to get baseball back not immediately, but it was going to come back. And I know you tweeted at me saying, "Oh, it looks like Kevin Powell's right." Hold on, folks. Not yet. It's all about posturing right now. And as I said last week, the reason why I was so pessimistic, not to toot my own horn, but this is why, because I've been saying for the last few weeks on the show, you're going back and forth like 5-year-old kids. Here's this proposal out in the media. Here's a counteraction to that, this and that, back and forth. It's like, for the final time, please handle your business behind closed doors. The next thing that I want to hear from both sides is that when is the date, how many games, and what's the schedule. That is it. Yep. Other than that, I don't want to hear anything else. Now, the other part of the proposal that I heard this week, and we've kind of known this for a while as the expanded playoffs. Now, I like the couple of teams that's going to get in. It looks like it's 10 teams, if I'm not mistaken, in
Yeah.
both leagues.
Yep.
If my math is correct.
Yep.
Uh, how, for this year, how are you going to do that when you have 75 games or 80 games? It's going to be a sprint, not a marathon, to see who's going to make the playoffs. But if you have 65 or 50 games, it's really going to be a mess. But at least 75, 80 games is doable. But I know that some folks say that they should end their season, the regular season, by the end of September in the fear of the wave of the second wave of coronavirus. Heaven forbid if that happens, but it's going to be a fight to the finish should the season resume. Because if you get off to a bad start, that means your season is over. Even though you have a couple of teams from each league added to each league before these expanded playoffs, you can't afford to get off to a good start. So it's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully, when these teams get back on the field, who's going to get up to the hot start, who's going to sustain it.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting because with the 162, if you have like a bad like a 8-10 game losing streak, you can kind of like you can get yourself back up. With this, like you said, since it's going to be a sprint, you can't afford to have a bad start. So and also like the adding of the playoff teams. I mean to have 10. I mean, how are they going to break this down? Are going to be like best of 3? The first 2 rounds going to be best of 3, and then the rest will be best of 7. Or maybe have a best of 5, one best of 3, maybe one best of 5, and then the rest be a best of 7. So I don't know. I mean, if you're trying to avoid the second wave, we keep hearing that there's going to be a second
Mm-hmm.
wave of this in the fall. I'm wondering, like, okay, how are you going to do that? You're going to try to get done maybe before November because, God forbid, there is a second wave. So that's going to be interesting too. Are you going to try to make the season longer, or are you trying to the shortened season? I mean, that's sort of like a thing they're going to have to figure out. And listen, they had a productive meeting earlier this week, Rob Manfred and Tony Clark, who's the president of the Players Association. But can we kind of like keep it like behind closed doors, like you said? I mean, all this stuff going around, you guys are acting like a bunch of grammar school kids. I mean, like I when I was in grammar school, I had a couple of classes that used to do that stuff. Thankfully, Twitter wasn't around then, but they kind of
Mm-hmm.
did the same thing here. So I mean, can we at least get something done? Because you've got a deadline here, and it's fast approaching. If you don't get something done by this time next month, you might as well just forget it. If you're talking about doing like a 3-week spring training, you gotta try and get started. No, you're running out of time.
Yeah, as we said before, you're going to go into the abyss with the other two leagues in the NBA, sorry, in the NHL starting late next month. You're going to be forgotten about. And don't forget, the NFL starts their training camp around that time next month as well. So if you don't have a 2020 season, people are going to forget about you. Yes, you're going to have your hardcore fans that's going to wait until next year when they can attend games and they can watch baseball. But this could get ugly in a hurry. And as we said before, baseball cannot afford to keep up with this bad PR and this posturing going on in front of the cameras. It's just bad optics. So hopefully they can take care of business. Hopefully we'll have some news to report next week.
Hopefully even sooner than that, because it's
Mm-hmm.
listen, TikTok. I mean, it's like we've been saying. I mean, you only got like maybe a few more weeks before you might as well go ahead and just cancel the season. I don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, you thought maybe it was close, then it turns out that we're not even close, and we're right back to where we started. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to say. It's just too crazy. All right, so a couple more topics before we take our break, and we'll be joined by ABC7 Chicago sports reporter anchor Dionne Miller. The NFL, Jamal Adams. There has been some infighting. We've been talking about some of these weeks since Bruce started doing this now. Word is that he actually has asked the Jets for a trade. What do you think, Sid? I mean, listen, he's one of the top defensive players in the league. I think he probably wants to go to a contender. I think I saw like the Ravens and the Cowboys are just a couple of teams that he would consider okay to trade to. So, what do you think about this Jamal Adams saga?
He's just using his power to see if he can get what he wants. I know he has 2 years remaining on his contract, including this upcoming season. And I know some people wanted the Bears to draft him a few years ago. He was part of that same draft class with quarterback Mitchell Trubisky. But with that being said, I was listening to some New York sports radio over the last couple of days, and I know they've been talking about he has the right to do that, but the Jets have other priorities right now.
Yep.
They're trying to rebuild to see if they can capture an AFC East title now with no longer Tom Brady being in New England. So
Yep.
the only team that you had to contend with is the Buffalo Bills, at least on paper, because they have the team they'll be the front runners to win the AFC East division with quarterback Josh Allen, now new wide receiver Stephon Diggs from the Vikings. But with Jamal Adams, as you said, Lakeena, he's one of the best young safeties in the league. And the Jets, still had to find out, is Le'Veon Bell going to be their running back moving forward? He's up there in age now. Is Sam Darnold going to be their franchise quarterback? And if so, you have to pay him. They had to still rebuild their defense. So I can understand Jamal wants to cash in his chips early, but sometimes you have to wait. And I know people don't want to hear this. I think this will be the word of the day, looking for this podcast for this tweet: patience.
Yep.
Patience, because today's show is brought to you by the word patience, just like Sesame Street. But he's going to have to wait. I'm not saying he doesn't have the right to ask for his money. He does, but he's still 2 years away from his contract expiring. We all know in the NFL, only 30% of your salary is guaranteed. So I understand with all the injuries and the safety concern, the injury issues, get all your guaranteed money as much of it as you can. But I don't know if the Jets will have enough to trade to get fair value for him. What's he really worth on the open market? Maybe as high as a second round pick. I'm sure in some people's mind he may be worth enough one pick, but I don't think so. But it may be as high as maybe number 2 at best. So if you're a Jets fan, hopefully this issue gets resolved quickly. Hopefully Jamal Adams and people around him to tell him that, hey, you'll get your money. You just have to be patient, focusing on this 2020 season, see if you can get the Jets into the playoffs, and then we'll talk from there.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting because of, like you said, Sid. I mean, I know he wants his money. I've seen some of the interview. I've seen some of his social media posts saying that he wants his cash now, and I don't blame him. But at the same time, look, you signed a contract. You're still in your rookie deal. You still got a couple of years left in that rookie deal. So unfortunately, you're kind of stuck. I mean, you're not gonna. And the Jets, I'm sure they know that they're not gonna get equal or high value for him. I mean, like you said, he may be a second rounder at most. I mean, I probably think they get the third rounder. So, and I don't think a lot of these teams are going to be that are contending that that he wants to go to are going to want to bite right now. So I think, look, you got to listen. The AFC East is wide open. You got your shot to go to the playoffs. I think you should just go ahead, just play out the rest of the contract, and then maybe at the end of the season, maybe you can revisit something. Maybe whether you want to do a contract extension or whether they do pick up your contract. But I think he's going to have to wait, like you said, patience. But I guess that's, like you said, there's a theme here to the show today. Said patience, and unfortunately, we haven't been seeing a lot of it. So it'll be very interesting with Jamal because I think he's like we've been saying, he's one of the top secondary guys in the league, and I think anybody can use an extra safety. But I think right now the Jets are not going to get like equal value for him. So if they put him on the market now, so I just don't think that's going to happen.
Here's the thing: if you're the New York Jets organization, just like all the other teams in the National Football League, the salary cap is kind of tricky. So you don't want to tie up all your money into 2 to 3 or maybe possibly 4 guys, because you're going to have to cut some other important guys as well. That helps, because let's be honest here, football is truly a team sport. One guy can carry you for so long, i.e. ask Aaron Rodgers up there in Green Bay before your time runs out and you get up there in age and injury. But you don't want to tie all your majority of your cap space into 2 to 3 players, because you're going to get in trouble in all the other parts that you need to fill. You won't be able to fill them because you tied up your main players, your main superstars into these big mega contracts, and it enables you to go out and make those important moves. So if you're the Jets, you're doing this smart-wise and business-wise, not to give Jamal Adams all that money yet. Like I said before, you still got to see if Sam Darnold is your franchise quarterback. You got to see if you're going to get you a number 1 wide receiver, and you still have to rebuild that defense. So Jamal Adams will just have to wait. Hopefully he has a great 2020. If he does, he has more leverage come this time next year, assuming that he doesn't get traded between now and opening day.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Yeah, I think those. I'm sure gonna be feel. I think they're gonna be fielding calls from a lot of these teams that especially the ones he wants to go to. I don't, like I said, the value. I don't think they're gonna get, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see within the next few weeks before these teams start training camp. Are they gonna be able to move him? Well, that'll be interesting. All right, so Colin Kaepernick, that's another name that's being floated around these last few weeks with all everything that's been going on. Now, Roger Goodell has said in an interview that he's encouraging teams to look at the 32-year-old QB. The Chargers, Anthony Lynn, who's the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, said that they would be interested in looking at him. Yeah, Pete Carroll said that he regretted not signing him. Of course, that actually ended up working out for them with Russell Wilson. But what do you think about all these comments that we got that's been coming out this week?
If Colin Kaepernick comes back to play in the NFL, good for him. As I said before on our last podcast, does he really want to play? Even though he took money from the NFL in that settlement from the lawsuit a couple of years ago.
Okay.
His services, but I just hope that whoever picks him up, they use him in the right way. Most likely he's going to be a backup. I just hope it's not posturing. It's not, we quote unquote owe him a favor. Hopefully he's being treated fairly and be used in a proper way whoever team picks him up. Like you mentioned, Lakeena, I know that the LA Chargers they said they were interested in working him out. There's one of the teams that can use him right now. Let's be honest here. Arizona could use a backup. I know Kyler Murray is their young franchise quarterback for Arizona, but Colin Kaepernick could be used as a good backup there with the system that they run. Like you mentioned, Seattle, Pete Carroll, he was this close to picking him up a couple years ago. Of course, he was override by management. It's like, we don't want to deal with the quote-unquote distraction. So Colin Kaepernick has a few options out there if he wants to come back, but I'm just waiting to see how this all plays out.
Well, I think that's the thing. Does he want to come back? I mean, like I said, he got that $20 million settlement, and there's like a lot of legalities that they can't, like neither side can say anything about, anything else has been happening. So, like I've been saying, he's 32, so he may not want to come back. So, does he have anything left in the tank for him to come back? I mean, he had already lost his job before all this started. So, that's the thing that people want. People are that's not comprehending to people. But it's interesting. Like I said, I mean, I'm sure there are going to be teams that are going to need a quarterback, especially a backup. So, like I've been saying, I mean, if he wants to come back, let's not make a service about it. Have private workouts. Don't like play the media, and neither side. So I think if that's the case, then okay, fine. If you want to come back, fine. I think he needs to kind of say that, okay, I want to come back. If not, let's just end all of this and just we can all move on.
Yeah, exactly. Just hopefully it works out fairly for Kaepernick if he decides to come back. Like I said, hopefully he's not using it as a quote unquote token symbol. It's just hopefully it's just if he comes back, hopefully he gets a fair opportunity to compete for a spot on the roster and not just brought there for a dog and pony show if he decides to give the NFL one more try.
Well, like I said, we'll see. I mean, all this is gonna. We'll see. I mean, I think he needs to put out a statement too, saying that okay, I want to come back, or I want. Listen, I'm enjoying what I'm doing now, being kind of like a philanthropist and social media like an activist and such. So I think he needs to kind of sort of put out a statement, say which will probably like I guess put an end to all this. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's see what else is in the headlines. A lot of the calls, a lot of like Confederate statues are being torn down or they're being renamed, which is another debate that's been going on all these years. Is the Washington football team? There's this another sort of rise of well, let's just say like where everything's been going on. There's this sort of calls for the Washington NFL team to change their name. What do you think? I know we don't call them by that name because we think it's
Right.
racist, but I think people need to also remember too that there's some money going on between them and the tribe. Much like also same thing with Florida State and the Seminoles. So it's a little more complicated than that. So what do you think about these renewed calls to kind of change the nickname?
And they're riding the wave of momentum right now with the Black Lives Matter movement at an all-time high, moving to a positive direction. Most of these college teams as well, along with a few of these pro teams that should get on board, that honoring people who represented the negative part of our history and being heralded as heroes is not tolerated. You see in, I think it's the University of Mississippi, they're trying to change
Yep.
the state flag. If they don't remove the state flag, there will be no college sports. And as you mentioned, like, Florida State as well. Clemson wanted the statue to be removed. I don't know if that's been removed yet, but I know students and former athletes of that school had
Yep.
rallies there for the last week and a half or so. So I, this is also a business move as well because they want people to attend the games and watch their team. So let's be honest here. If they were in good faith of removing these statues now, while we are in this time period, why didn't you remove them a long time ago? That's been my question. I'm glad you're doing it now, but if you are quote unquote doing it in good faith, why didn't you do this a long time ago? Same thing with NASCAR. I'm glad they removed the Confederate flag, but it had to take a murder to do this and an outrage and a protest to do this. I'm glad you did, but why didn't you do this a long time ago? That's the question that's been popping in my head for this past week.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think of it as if that maybe you look at all the things that's been happening that are trying to change. I mean, Texas is not doing their Texas fight. Well, not well. Part of the Texas fight that has like a lot of racial like undertones in some of the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
You have the eyes of Texas, so that I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
those are all of you have probably heard it like every football, basketball, track meet, what have you. And then you had like you said, the Clemson had like one of their like prominent statues is named after a slave owner. And then you have all those statues and such. And look, I mean, I've always been sort of a person that's sort of like, listen, I want more nuance. I want like people to have conversations about this stuff. I think that
Mm-hmm.
now, well, especially they'll look at Mike Gundy over at Oklahoma State. I mean, he's been in a lot of trouble this week. He's been kind of
Yeah.
like, and to think a couple of years ago, that Mullen was the worst of his problems, and then like he had I forgot he also showed now he played for the Colorado football team. He said that Gundy said the N word to him and some of his teammates, years ago when they were in
Mm-hmm.
college. So that's becoming brought up as well. Look, I mean, I've always been someone that feels that a person can grow and change, and if you listen, that's always been sort of my thing. And especially with NASCAR, I remember Dale Earnhardt Jr. said a couple of years ago that he wanted to remove the flag. No one listened to him at the time. As I said the last couple of weeks, nobody wanted to listen to him at the time. And this is like
Mm-hmm.
a prominent figure, or probably one of the most popular drivers in NASCAR. They didn't listen to
No,
him because
his dad was a legend too in that sport.
yeah, exactly. So I think his dad had said some things about it too, because I think like Wendell Scott, who was one of the first black NASCAR drivers, was a
Mm-hmm.
really good friend of his. Um, but yeah, I mean, so all this other stuff has been happening. I mean, listen, I always feel like, okay, I think talking, having conversations, not canceling people just because they don't agree with they make statements that you don't agree with. I think we need conversations. We need to have more nuance. Like people can grow and change. And look at Drew Brees and his wife Brittany. I mean, look the total 180 they've had. I mean, look, I think for me, I think that having those conversations, having people listen and say, look, this is why this person who you're named a statue after was not a very good person in history, why the flag is not a good look for the United States. This is not the United States. The Confederacy is not a good part of American history. Yes, it is a part of it, but it shouldn't be there's a reason why it's not prominent anymore in other places besides the South. Having those conversations, people being nuanced, having people willing to listen, I think. Listen, I think I think like we've been saying, Sid, patience, and I think people being more vocal about that. Listen, this is not the type of person that you want to name a statue for. name it after your top some of your top athletes or people in history, the Harriet Tubman or something.
Hmm.
So I think that's sort of like the thing that I think that's what people need to remember about this type of stuff. But that's just my opinion. But
Yeah, we all should learn our history, Lakeena, both the good and the bad. It's easy to try to erase history, especially the events that was horrible and tragic and horrific, like the Holocaust, which people try to erase from history. You can't do that. Us as African Americans, with slavery and Jim Crow, those are we had great history opposite of that as well. But the horrific stuff you cannot erase. It must be talked about as well because that's what happened. But like we've been saying for the last few weeks, listen to everything, even the bad, not just what you want to hear, but you got to listen to everything. And once you listen to everything, you'll become a better person, whether you agree with that person or not. Listen to everything. It may change your perspective on whatever subject or subjects that you're talking about, but you have to listen to everything and gather all the information from all sides. And so you'll have even if you have the same perspective or a different perspective, just listen to everything. And with all information, you'll become a better person. If it changes your opinion on certain issues, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Just listen to everything, not just what you want to hear.
like I've been saying, I mean, it's easy to cancel folks just because you don't agree with that person. Oh, well, that person is
Hmm.
canceled. I mean, this cancel culture has gone out of control. I've been saying the last couple of weeks.
I agree.
Listen, just listen. If people, okay, yeah, I mean, explain to them why this is bad. I mean, I don't listen. I
Hmm.
don't want people to listen. I think people are afraid to talk about like stuff like Juneteenth or like you said, Holocaust and Jim Crow and slavery. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, you can't look at the world through rose-colored glasses. You have to, like you said, you have to
Hmm.
remember the horrific and the horrific parts and the bad parts of the history. That's just how it is. You can't just say, oh well, that to say did not teach is pretend that didn't happen, and you can't do that. All right. So, anything else you want to delve into before we
Real
take our?
quick on the holiday of Juneteenth, I'll
Go
be
ahead.
honest. Yeah, just real quick on the holiday of Juneteenth. I didn't know anything about it till shout out to this is not an advertisement, but shout out to the local radio, the only black-owned radio station here in Chicago is WVON AM 1690 here in Chicago. I didn't know anything about Juneteenth. I started listening to that station. They had various programs. They had various segments about it. And of course, we all know about the history of the Civil War and Reconstruction. Of course, Jim Crow. They came after that. Slavery's been 400, 500 years ago to that extent, but I didn't know anything about Juneteenth until I started listening to that station and I started doing my research a little bit more. I said, oh, okay, I didn't know this existed because what's being taught, I know this is a whole nother subject for a whole nother show, but was being placed in our textbooks in other forms of information, other forms of books. You don't get the whole history. You only get bits and pieces of it. You don't get the whole story. And that's a big problem because I didn't know anything about Juneteenth, not through grade school, not through high school, and definitely not through college. So we had to do more and put more information, the correct information in our textbooks. It's just, and especially now with not just with the internet, with social media, getting the correct information out to people.
Yeah, I actually learned about it in grammar school. I had like one of those history teachers that would say, "Listen, I'm going to teach you some stuff that's not in the book." I had one of those teachers, so I was
Good for your
fortunate.
teacher.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she's the Miss Durham, who I'm sure she's still living. I haven't talked to her in years, but she was the one that taught us about a lot of the stuff that wasn't in our history books. So I think that's another thing that I think people at schools need to do a better job of the curriculum and
Hmm.
teaching about that kind of stuff because I mean, it happened in history, and I think, like you said, Sid. I mean, with the internet, a lot of it, they get a lot of it wrong, unfortunately. So I think if people need to kind of like, okay, let's take a step back and see, like, okay, what's history? Okay, well, if something horrific that happens in that part, okay, fine, we'll have to teach that too. So, but I think having the conversations and letting people learn about what goes on in the world history, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Also, too, parents help and step up and teach your kids these events as well, the good and the bad as well. Of course, hold the schools accountable, but you have a responsibility at home to teach your kids as well. Don't just rely on the school system to do everything for you. You're part of the process as well, and teach your kids about their history and events like this, like Juneteenth, that doesn't get talked about much in the mainstream.
A PTA, I think the PTA, I think that the meaning of the PTA has been lost these last few years, and
Hmm.
because no one's communicating. So if you want to be a part of that, help. Listen, that's a big part of the curriculum too. If you're a parent and you have a kid in school, you want this stuff like this to be taught. You got to speak up. I mean, if people will give you the dirty look, okay, fine, I'll just teach it. I'll just go to another school system that will teach my kid that kind of thing. So that's another thing that people need to remember as well.
Hmm.
All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we'll be joined by ABC7 Chicago sports anchor and reporter Dionne Miller. She'll talk Bears, she'll talk NBA. I'm sure she'll have a lot of things to say about some of those two that we talked about as well. So we'll be right back. Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back to Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
All right. Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sidney Brown. And joining us for our second segment today is the queen of ABC7 Sports.
Oh.
Yes.
It's true.
I've been knowing her for the last few years. We're not going to date ourselves. In working with the D and Davis show, it was finally getting a chance to meet her face-to-face via Zoom. She's the only Dionne Miller from ABC7 Chicago Sports. You can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at DMillerABC7. Once again, at DMillerABC7. Dionne, how are you doing today?
I am doing quite well, actually. It's the first day of summer vacation for my children. No e-learning, no homework. And my son has graciously called it a yes day. So do you want to watch TV? Yes. Do you want to sit in your pajamas? Yes. Like, these are the days. This is the one day they get. And then next week we'll probably try to get a routine. But it is a lovely day for the first day of summer break. I could not be more thrilled.
We'll give you an applause for that.
Yeah,
one.
I can only imagine what all you parents are going through.
I'm just going to tell you guys, I was not meant to be a homeschool teacher. Like, that is not my calling. That is not my forte. So I'm very glad that e-learning is done, at least for a few months.
Yeah, we can see the relief on your face and the joy in your voice. So we're with you on that one.
The relief. I think the relief. I think you and other parents are probably having right now. School's ending. Oh, I can't imagine. I can't imagine what that's like. Like, oh gosh, like, because my mom was a teacher for many years, so I'm like, oh Lord, I can't imagine what these parents are going through. She told me.
It is, and I mean, I love my children. I love being a mom. That's like my favorite role in the whole world. But it felt like every day was an argument, and I didn't understand some of the things that they were doing, and I didn't know how to explain it to them. And I mean, bless their teachers, they didn't sign up for that either, right? So they're used to being in the classroom. It was just a challenge. I know we've never been through anything like this before, so we were all kind of dealing at the same time. But it's stressful on the kids. It was stressful at home. And then, trying to work and teach school and make sure that, and then grocery shop. And this is the weirdest thing. I mean, it still is weird that I'm working from home, but like, I would be writing a show for the news or a package, helping my kids, and then folding laundry, and then going on camera. And then, I mean, it's just like all the things. It was like, just even today, like, I'm emptying the dishwasher, and then I'm writing the show for 5 o'clock. I mean, it's just different. It is just a lot. So that's just real life, but everybody's in it, and we're all in it together.
Right.
Yeah.
We are.
It couldn't be well said. Let's start off with baseball. Hopefully you can help out the players union and the owners. Because we've been saying on this show for the last few weeks, there's enough blame to go around, but the owners have a 60-game proposal with a 100% salary, pro salary rate for the players. The Players Association came back with 70 games in a full salary rate of 100% salary rate. We've been saying this on the show for the last few weeks. Can you stop fighting like 5-year-old kids in front of the cameras and your stuff behind closed doors? The next thing I want to hear from the MLB is, when is the opening day for baseball? When do the players report? And we can go on from there. Maybe you can say it in a nicer way, Dionne. Me and Lakeena have been saying this for the last few weeks. They're not getting the message. Maybe you can help them out.
I don't know if anybody can. I feel I'm so exhausted by the back and forth. And I love how the players union last week said, we're not going to dialogue with you anymore. What did they do in the middle of this week? They dialogued again. Like they threw it back in.
Yeah.
Like they're not even staying consistent. They're not staying consistent. They said when and where, which was like the best 3 words that they could have said. The union comes back with the when and where, the league comes back with the when and where, and then, or at least, but they didn't explain like how they're going to get to this moment. I think Manfred has just fumbled this left and right. It's ugly. The owners are pulling his strings. The players are trying to get what they can. But it's embarrassing. It's to the point where they're losing. I am a baseball purist. This is my favorite sport. It's not, and it's not even close. I love the game. And right now I'm like, just get on the field. It's what's frustrating to me is that with each day that passes, they're losing the time that will be safe. You hear Dr. Fauci talk all the time, like playing into November and December is not wise for them. Like we could have another phase of the pandemic. And so they're losing ground. And I feel like what they're trying to do is start putting things on the table for their collective bargaining agreement that will, in however many months they're supposed to be renegotiating that. I feel like they're bringing their emotions and what they would take into that negotiation into this one. And that's what's delaying the process. I mean, just get on the field. What frustrates me is we're hearing things like the Chicago Dogs in independent baseball. They can figure it out.
Yep.
Why can't the highest level of the game figure it out? Just go by yourselves. Come to us when you say, okay, 65, 60 or 70 games. Let's do this. 65 games, start July 19th, end September 30th. Show us what it's going to look like. Just go. I'm at a loss. And I'm frustrated and embarrassed for the game I love.
It's sort of interesting, like you said, that Dan, about the game, because we've been, like Sid and I've been saying for the last few weeks. I mean, I can only imagine about White Sox fans, who thought that maybe this was going to be like the season that they're going to break through. And then like the Cubs fans, you wonder, some people thought that maybe they still had a chance to compete in the NL Central and all this. So, but it's sort of like, okay, can we figure this out? I mean, we've said that if they don't figure this out by about like before the end of the month, they could kind of get lost in the shuffle like they did in the 94. The 94 strikes, that's going to be nothing. What do you think about that?
No, totally agree with you. And once the other leagues come back as they're planning to, it's going to make them look even worse, right? Like, get yourselves together. This is your season. This is your time. They already get lost in the shuffle once college football starts, the NFL starts, then, NHL and NBA, like once, and they're going to be in their postseason, and Major League Baseball is going to be sitting on the sidelines complaining about things still. I just feel like they need to show that they appreciate the attention that they are getting. And this is their time. This is summer. This is when it's supposed to be baseball season. And instead we're watching an argument. Like it's not good. It's not good for the game. That is for sure.
Dionne Miller, the queen of ABC7 Chicago Sports, joins us right here on Second City
You need
Sports.
to stop calling me that, Sidney, because I'm going to make like Mark and Jim treat me differently.
Hey, that's the point. That's
the idea.
Dionne Miller of ABC7 Chicago Sports joins us here on Second City Sports Zoom style, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. Dionne, as you mentioned about the other sports returning, let's do that hockey. The Chicago Blackhawks, with all the turmoil they've been going through on and off the ice this year, they get a second chance of life with this 2014 tournament. As I've been saying for the last few weeks, the NHL, they can capitalize on potential new fans right here, because all their Canadian teams are involved in this. The Chicago Blackhawks are involved in this as well. You have the New York Rangers and the New York Islanders involved in it, as well as the two teams from the number one market. I'm not going to ask you if the Hawks have a chance to get to Edmonton Oilers. That's not the point here. But do you think that the NHL, hopefully with the players with the high competing level because of the nature of the playoffs, do you think that the NHL has the chance to grab new fans and hopefully the popular teams advance in this tournament?
Absolutely, Sidney. I mean, sports fans are starving. We're starving for live sporting events. And Bettman gets booed left and right, but give him credit for getting at least a.
Uh-oh.
I'm getting getting a plan set, getting things moving in the right direction for them. Now, when we talked to the Blackhawks last week, Patrick Kane was the first one to say, hey, wait a minute. We don't have it all. It's not all going to go as smoothly as they're saying it is.
Right.
But again, I'm not seeing the holdup like the rest of the league seem to, or at least like baseball seems to be having. And then spoke with Duncan Keith last week, and he says the same thing. He's like, I love how the NHL is throwing all these dates out there, but we haven't been told any of these things. So I think there's still a little bit of a hurdle to get over, but I agree with you that they're going to get, there's so many eyeballs on them when they start moving forward with this, it appears. Now, again, they need a when and where. They need a timeline and a hub city and all the things to unfold, but they're smart. They've got the biggest markets involved. They've got their Canadian teams involved, which is clearly going to get a lot of eyes on them. And you put the cup at the end of anything, the level of play jumps up exponentially, right? I mean, we've all seen it. That's why we love hockey playoffs. So I think that they can win a lot of new fans this way. And I think that's going to bode really well for the game moving forward, especially if they don't have to delay next season super long. Like they can pick up maybe a month or so after they finish this one and jump right back into hockey. Like you can keep the attention of fans for sure.
Assume that everything finishes on time to completing this season. From what I've heard for the last few weeks, that they'll start the 2020-21 season in November. Of course, the Winter Olympics is next year, so the NHL and the Olympic Committee, they're not seeing eye to eye, so no NHL players will participate in that. You'll skip the All-Star weekend and just play through it like a normal year. So assuming that everything finishes up for the 2020 season, 2021 should fly by with no problem. No Olympics and no All-Star break.
Well, then that would be a bonus. Then I think that even attributes to what you were talking about winning fans and then keeping the fans. I think that's what's going to be key. We're all going to watch. Gosh, I'm going to watch the Belmont this weekend, like I never have before, right? Because we just want to watch something competitive.
Yeah.
So I think that once they get some fans get their eyes on this and see just how entertaining it can be, even with empty arenas, which is going to be interesting. But even with that, I think that you're gonna win the fans over and then be able to roll them right into next year. I think it would work really well.
Also the endurance aspect of it too. I mean, who's kind of have kept themselves in shape and who has actually let themselves go, especially with hockey. You're going back and forth and not a lot of breaks. So that's going to be another key too especially with the playoffs. It's going to be a lot of intensity.
Oh, no question about that. And I know that the guys, like when we talked to Duncan last week, he said he hasn't been on the ice since March 12th, their last game in San Jose. And I said, is this the longest time that you haven't done that? And he said, no, usually in the off season, he's only on the ice like 7 or 8 times. So they found ways to get their land work done to stay in shape. So it will be interesting because you're right. They drop that puck and it is go. I mean, and that's what we love about it is the intensity. So it's gonna be interesting. There will be rust on everybody, but gosh, I can't wait until it's happening.
We're with you on that one, Dionne. Let's move to the sport that you cover the most, and that's football in the Chicago Bears. Now we'll focus on what's happening off the field first. I know training camp is a little bit more than a month away, and of course it's no longer going to be in Bourbonnais. It's going to be at Hallis Hall. In the NFL, and send out memos to all the teams that there are going to be no fans at the training camp sites this year. Have you received the word from the Bears or the NFL how the media is going to cover the team? Or are you guys going to do a Zoom style, or is it going to be just a limited amount of reports at Hallis Hall? Have you had any word yet from the organization or the league yet?
Absolutely none. And that is going to be fascinating because, I think about how much space they have up in Lake Forest to do training camp there. And that's why they built it there, is to do it there. I mean, that's what their plan was. So there is space. I don't know. I don't know if they would we will probably not be in any locker rooms anytime soon, which, to be frank, Lakeena, you would understand this. That's okay with me. Like,
yeah, I can imagine.
That's I'll be okay. I would guess they'd bring them out and do interviews that way, but I don't know. Like they have that media room where, frankly, the players are 6 feet from us. We are on top of each other. So I don't know if that would be how they'll manage that. They may limit it. I know that in the news, on the news side of things, they've done more pool reporters when it comes to covering the governor's address every day and the mayor and that sort of thing, where they've had one reporter go in and ask the questions and then it comes back to everybody else. So I don't know if they would do it that way. We've heard nothing. And talking to Chuck Pagano yesterday, he said, as far as we know, July 20th, that's what we're still planning on for report day for training camp. So how that looks media wise, I'm not sure how they'll handle that. They will have to limit it, you know that. So we'll see what happens. I know that this Zoom style has worked for what they've given us, and how we've gotten to talk to players and coaches has worked very well. I also know that the Bears have their own network. So would they just set up their camera guy at the podium? We call in our questions and the feed goes out to everybody. I mean, that's a possibility too, especially for training camp and as we're just getting started before actual games start happening, if they happen. I mean, there's just so many questions. I think that's what's hard about this time. There's just so many question marks that remain as to what normal will look like if and when that happens.
My guess is they'll probably end up starting up with the Zoom style press conference, and like you say, looking like what they've been doing with the Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Governor Pritzker, and just have the reporter there and just have you guys, what you've been doing as the beat reporters, just ask your questions via Zoom there. Now, can things change? Sure, but I think that's how they're going to start off, because they don't want a lot of people there, as you well know. And number two, they're going to have players trying to social distance, and it's going to be hard enough on them and the staff in that building.
Yeah, totally. And some of the guys, may not be comfortable being around us and being around people that are from the outside. And a lot of the coaches said they have zero concerns about their own health and safety, but players have family that might be high risk, or might be, parents they might still be around a lot, or what, I mean, I feel like it needs to be their choice what they're comfortable with. And same with reporters. What are we comfortable with? I haven't, I don't know if I said this to you guys, but I haven't been at the station in months. I don't know what that even will feel like for me, and how comfortable am I? I have small children, and, so just, I think that to everybody has to kind of navigate that on their own, and we need to respect how they feel about that.
Well, especially after Dr. Fauci's comments from earlier this week saying that, well, listen, good luck playing during the football season, because unless everybody's going to be on a bubble, which is going to be hard because you got a whole lot of players and media and stuff. So I know you probably are still you're wrapping your mind around it too, like the rest of us. How do you think that the football season is going to kind of play out, especially in this uncertain time?
Well, I can't imagine fans being allowed anywhere near, say college or pro. I can't imagine fans being in the stands, which is hard to imagine as well, right? Like playing a game with will they pump in? I would assume they pump in crowd noise like they do for practice, right? That's what I would assume. I can't imagine that. I can see somewhat of a bubble, but you're right, with 32 teams and all the players, and how do you do that? That's way more than the NBA can do, right? The NBA is smaller teams. It's what they limiting to 17 people per team, and you can kind of quarantine that per hotel and per place to stay, and the space they need for playing games is much smaller than a football field. So how do you make that work in a bubble situation? I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I don't even know how you'd begin to do that. I think a little bit about MLS, and their fields are roughly the same size. And some of those facilities, I know, like the Fire, have a bubble that they practice in. So would it look like that? Is that how they would play football games? And then I think, is it worth that risk? I don't know if they think that it will be. And so there's just too much there. I don't know how that could even happen. I really don't. And yet I want to stay optimistic, but I don't want to be foolishly optimistic, and I don't think the league does either. And Dr. Fauci was on the Dan Patrick show this week, and he was talking about how he's been speaking with commissioners. Like, they will call him and ask questions because they want to know what's going on. And so they're trying to rely on the medical professionals who know the best routes to take when it comes to this stuff. And so we'll just have to be patient and see.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Dionne, and we've been talking about it on the show for the last week or so, that Of course, Baltimore head coach John Harbaugh said that, with the safety protocols, of course, things had to get ironed out. But how can you really practice social distancing to an extent on the practice field, especially with the offensive and defensive huddles? All the players had to be grouped together. They can't really be separated. Of course, when the ball is hiked, they're tackling each other. They're on top of each other. There's no social distancing. So like you said, how this is going to work, I don't know. You just going to have to take your chances.
Sidney, the Bears can't social distance in the tight end room, let alone so there is, this is the challenge. It's almost impossible to expect that to happen. And then you have to just remember, I was talking with some girlfriends this morning about school in the fall, and they're like, well, we just have to understand that these are the risks we're taking when we decide to go to the grocery store, when we decide to send our kids to school, when we decide to play football. These are the risks that you're taking. And again, it goes back to how comfortable are the athletes, how comfortable are the coaches, and how comfortable are those like us in the media who are covering them, and what that looks like, until there's a vaccine and we all can have a little bit more assurance that we have protection.
This is going to be very interesting because I'm sure, you're in those close quarters in the locker rooms and such, Dionne. And I remember Kim Jones from NFL Network saying that, well, good luck, because that's going to be hard to do, especially with some of those stadiums. So do you think you're going to be running around the sidelines, or are you going to be able to kind of like, what do you think is going to be, it's going to be like for you?
I don't know. I feel like it's changed how we will do our jobs. Maybe forever, maybe just until there's a vaccine. I'm not sure. But think about you guys know what it looks like in a locker room scrum. Yeah. I'm literally, because I'm a petite person, I will literally crawl just shy of crawling through somebody's legs, like underneath.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I'm not kidding. And people are always like, whoa, where'd you come from? And that's how on top of each other that we are. Right. And so even as a pregnant person doing my job, I would be like, people, you're crushing on top of each other. I don't know how good luck with that is exactly. Now, if we're not in a locker room, that certainly helps. You can tape things off and we can stand back, but there is a sort of, I guess, much more of a candid intimacy when you're close like that. And when you're just asking the questions and not from a distance and not over Zoom, there's something that sometimes players will be able to let their down. Now, maybe that will change now that we've gotten so comfortable with Zooms and how we talk to people. We're in each other's homes. Maybe they'll be able to share. They'll be more comfortable with us. I'm not sure. I'm just, again, it's just so much unknown. I guess that's everything is speculation right now.
Dionne Miller of ABC7 Chicago Sports joining us here on Second City Sports, Zoom style. Dionne, let's transition to college football. And I know you said that college football in the NFL, your predictions, they will start with no fans. I've been saying on this program for the last few weeks, I think college football and the NFL, unless something dramatic happens, both of those leagues will start on time. But I think for college football, since they start first on August 29th, presumably everything goes according to plan. I think you'll see some fans in the stands, but it won't be at full capacity. Like the school you went to, Ohio State, they hold 80,000 people at the Horseshoe. You're not going to see 80,000 people.
No,
you may see
that's not happening.
Quarter that at the big house in Michigan, they're holding 110,000 people. You're not going to see 110,000 people. You may see half of that, maybe a quarter of that. As you well know, tailgating right before a game is an event in itself, and social distancing will go right out the window. My long-winded now short question to you is: do you think that college football will start on time, especially if they allow some fans in the stands due to various states?
I'm not sure. Well, first of all, I don't mean to correct you. I am a diehard Ohio State fan. Did not go to school there. I just grew up.
Thanks for the correction.
So I can't claim to be an alum, although a pseudo alum. Would say. Here's what I will say about college football. I think college football took a huge hit this week with so many players testing positive at Texas, at Tech, at Alabama. On Monday is when they were allowed to do these voluntary workouts at Texas, and 13 players have tested positive, in 4 days. So I feel like college football is going to have to take their foot off the gas a little bit. And I'm sorry to Pat Fitzgerald and Lovie Smith, and they're trying to do it as safely as they can here in Illinois and Chicago. like, let's be smart about this. And I know young people probably think that they're invincible, and it won't be, and maybe they will, most of them will recover if they come down with COVID-19. We need to put a protection around them. These are our young people, and this is their futures, and they need to make sure that they are staying as safe as possible. So I think things will get pushed back with college football, especially unless we see a vaccine start to come to fruition, which I don't think is going to happen for at least another year, or we start to see different ways to protect themselves and to keep the kids safe in those capacities. I do think college football will start a little bit later. I think their season will be a little bit shorter. Let's be real. Do they need those non-conference games? Do we need to see Ohio State like a bad team from wherever? Like, do we need Appalachian State to upset Michigan? Do we need those things? No, because what we care about conference schedule, right? So do they need those 4 games? Maybe not. Maybe they start in October. Maybe they just do conference games. Maybe they, like there's different options I feel like they could have. But no fans and not starting on time would not surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, pumping up crowd noise, maybe they may have to do that. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, and college is good. Like we were saying for the last few weeks, that college is going to be very tricky because, like you said, Dionne, more and more players are testing positive. I don't know what can they do. This is going to be, I know the NCAA wants to kind of like let the schools and the conferences decide what they want to do, but I think there needs to be kind of like a universal, like, okay, some schools are going to be able to do it, some schools aren't, and I just don't think that's going to be fair.
Well, I think that's the hardest part, right? Is that every state is different. Like, you go to Lincoln, Nebraska, and it's like normal life. I mean, they're not, you know what I mean? They're not even wearing masks. They're not even required to. Whereas then you go out to like Connecticut or New York, and they're still in phase 1 or 2. Like you can't level that playing field right now because there's so much unknown and there's so many question marks, and every state is different. And so how can the NCAA really regulate when it's different at every state? So there's just a lot of pressure on them. And here we are so starved for sports that we're all like, just go back on the field. Like, you just give us something. And yet you can't really say that. We can't do that right now.
Dionne, let's go to the Harvard right now. Let's focus in on, yes, the Chicago Bulls. So, of course, they had a lot of changes since this pause of the 2020 season. You have a new GM, Mark Eversley. You have a new team president. But there's reports out saying that they're not getting the full backing. And head coach Jim Borland, as of now, still has his job. Do you think that this new administration will be allowed to do what they need to do, whether they fire Jim Borland or not?
I do. I really do. I think that Garpax was so not controlled. That's not the right word, but I feel like they were, maybe that is the word, controlled for a very long time and told what they'll do when they do it. Fred Hoiberg was our head coach. Okay. That was not, and Tom Thibodeau was fired. Even just to say that seems bizarre. And yet I feel like they were kind of just the mouthpiece for so long that it was time for something new. And I really think that AK is going to get to have his say. I really think that Eversley is going to get to have his control too. I'm a Jim Boylan fan. I like him as a person. I don't think he's supposed to be their head coach. And I think that the wisdom they've brought into the room is going to notice that too. Now, will he stay on in some other capacity? Perhaps. I think that with the bumps and bruises and the ups and downs they had last season, that he did earn some respect from the players. And although it was a disaster on the court, I don't think it was that ugly off of it. And so we'll see what that ends up looking like. But I do think they're going to have their say as the new administration, and they're going to be able to make the calls the way that they want to. I think we saw that already in hiring Eversley, that AK got to hire the guy he wanted and got to bring in the assistants that he wanted to be assistants to the GM, and voices that he knows will echo the things that he feels. And the way they ran things in Denver, we talked to their sideline reporter, and she was telling us, like, they had equal, everybody spoke in that office, and the way they ran the front office and the way they drafted and built the Nuggets, like that's what he's trying to do here in Chicago. He was hired for a reason, and this is it, to build the front office and the staff that he thinks will help the Bulls be what they once were. And watching The Last Dance was eye-opening, right? Like, how far are they from that from what that was like, and being that team. Like, they just seem so far away. Like, thank God they, over this quarantine, that they've really taken the next steps to rebuilding. I think it's so funny. I know you guys saw it at the end of it. It was like, and then they began a rebuild, and it's like, yeah,
it's still happening.
Still laying the bricks, right? Like, so hopefully this is a corner that they turned. It's better for the game for Chicago to be in it, you guys. You know this.
Yep. Oh,
and
yeah.
Get a good coach in here who's going to help develop the players the way that they need it, and young, because they have young talent. And gosh, I couldn't be a bigger fan of Zach LaVine, right? Like, I want him to be the star, and I want them to take that next step. You know, I think they're going to get to bring in the right voices to make it happen in the room.
Speaking of Jim Boylen, assuming that he's let go, what type of coach do you think fits this team? I know there's been names out there like Kenny Atkinson, who was let go by the Nets, David Vista, who was let go early now in the season this season by the New York Knicks, and Adrian Griffin, who was a former Bulls player and former Bulls assistant coach at one time.
And former teammate of AK's at Seton Hall too.
Yeah.
Exactly. His name's floated out there. What type of coach you like to see coach this young Bulls team?
Well, I think it needs to be different than the last two, right? So I feel like Fred Hoiberg wasn't as whistleblowing and calling, like, and getting their attention the way that Boylen. Then I feel like Boylen was the other end of the extreme, right? So it was either someone who was kind of like passive, or it was somebody who was losing his mind. You know what I mean? Like yelling and that sort of thing. We have a guest. And so I feel like
Hello.
This is my daughter, Noah.
Hi, Noah.
Hey, Noah.
Hi, Noah.
Anyway, I feel like we need a coach that is going to be somewhere in the middle, that's going to get their attention and have their respect. I think having somebody who has played in the league is a big deal. I think that somebody who can relate to them at their level, what ages they are, because this is a young team. And I think they need somebody who can relate on that and meet them where they're at, and then push them and develop. I think they need a coach that can develop them. And you mentioned how many connections AK has. His roots in this league are very, very deep, and he's so well respected. He's going to get somebody in here who speaks the way that he does, right? Like that says, that is following. It's not just going to be lip service when the GM speaks. It's going to be that the coach echoes that on the floor and with the team. And that's what I think they need.
Yeah, you brought up the Last Dance documentary. We all been were entertained by that for the previous week. So of course, me and Lakeena were born and raised in Chicago. We're of age, so we won't give our real ages here. But we grew up in a time where the Bulls were bad. We started to see the ascendance of the franchise. Of course, Michael Jordan and all the other pieces that came along later. What did you think about the Last Dance documentary?
Wasn't it wonderful? Wasn't it wonderful?
Yeah,
it was such a gift, and they did such a great job. I could not be a bigger fan of Jason Hare, who was the director. He did such tremendous work and really gave it, I think, a really complete look. I wish they had done one episode a week and not two, so that it would still be going on. I was sad when it was done. I wanted more. I was such a fan of the Bulls in the 90s. I think everybody was. I had the Wheaties box posters in my college dorm room. That might be revealing my age as well. But
26, Dionne, so
you're
it's
say you're 26.
Yeah, right. Oh, of course I am. And that. So did I say college? I meant my preschool dorm rooms. That's what I meant.
Exactly.
Oh. No, I was a huge fan, and I felt like the music, the video, it just took you back. I mean, it was so fantastic and so well done. And what was interesting was I didn't realize, I don't think anybody did, what a mess was going on behind the scenes.
Right.
When Jordan came back. I don't think anybody realized that. It was interesting to me too, because I was in Florida when he was with the White Sox, and that was my hometown. I mean, they trained right down the street from where I lived. And I remember when Michael Jordan was driving around Sarasota, Florida, and people would think, oh, he's in that car, and people would get out of the car and follow the red car down the street. I mean, we did that stuff, and it was just, it was interesting just how much of a mess was going on behind the scenes. And I was bummed that we didn't get more voices from the leadership. I liked hearing from Jerry Reinsdorf just because it's so rare that we hear from him. But and why can I not? You guys, this is embarrassing. What's his name? He passed away. I can't even.
Well, Jerry Krause.
Thank you, holy Lord, Dionne. Jerry Krause, that would have been really cool. Heard from him now and looking back. I love how competitive the guys are, that here we are 22 years later and they're still not over it with Isaiah and the Pistons, and they're still mad about Reggie Miller and the Pacers. Like, I love that stuff. I feel like the game has changed so much since then. And it was a gift to us during a time when we all really, really needed it. And I think glaringly is how well done it was. It was glaring then when you watched Long Gone Summer, and I felt like it just wasn't quite there, right? It wasn't quite the same as The Last Dance. And they've had equal amount of time to put something together like that, right?
Yeah. I've been saying this to get to our previous guests on the show for the last few weeks, about The Last Dance, and I'll say it to you. Going to those games with my late mother, she and her family friend had season tickets to those games at Old Chicago Stadium. Let me tell people who are listening right now, those Bulls Pistons games were big events, and they were bloodbaths, quote unquote. Those were major events, and there was some great basketball being played. And of course, what kept it off for me was 1991. No one expected it, but the Bulls finally got rid of the Pistons, swept them in 4 games, and especially despite what happened in Game 4 on that Memorial Day in 1991, it was just great to see it coming up during that time.
Oh, I can't even imagine what it was like to be here. And that's one thing I said. Like, I have seen 2 Stanley Cup championships. I have seen the Cubs win the World Series. I have I've not seen a Bears playoff game. Well, we saw one sort of playoff game. Let's not even count that. But I have the postseason and competing for a Super Bowl. I cannot imagine what it was like to year in and year out cover a team that was expected to win and then did it. Like, to be covering a dynasty. It was so cool to hear from Mark Giangreco and Jim Rose about living that. I mean, Jim was there. He was at every game. Like, it was so cool to hear from behind the scenes. Same with like my producers and photographers who were there. I just can't, I want that in my lifetime, because it was so cool to see it unfold like that. I just can't imagine what it was like to grow up here and see it happen that way. I grew up a Browns fan, you guys. Oh my Lord.
You have our sympathies.
That wasn't real life for me, but how cool to have lived that, to have been at those games, to have those memories, Sidney. Like, how cool is that? I want that for my children, right?
Yeah. Well, and also with the going with the aspect of the Bulls, I mean, DePaul, before the Bulls became like this big phenomenon, they were sort of like, we were saying the last couple of weeks, I mean, we've been saying that DePaul was like the big phenomenon back in the early, like the late 70s, early 80s and stuff. You know, they had a little bit of resurgence in the 90s and in the early 2000s, but Jean Lindsay Ponzetto, announced her retirement from DePaul being the AD. So what do you think DePaul has to do to kind of get back into that level? Because they got a school president there, and what do you think they got to do?
I know. I mean, I like Dave Lato. I was surprised when he came that they brought him back. I was surprised, and I was also surprised that they started the season 12-1 and then won like 2 more games. I mean, like, there's some things being lost in translation there, and you're right. Our city is hungry for that, and there are some talented kids here that should stay here and have a place to play good, consistently competitive college basketball. And DePaul is that spot, right? I mean, Loyola's had their moments, but it's not the same. It's not the same. They don't have the depth of the following like you just mentioned with DePaul. And so what do they need? Gosh, I mean, they need some consistency with their players and what they're able to do. I mean, they've had some good guys and then they move on. Like Paul Reed was great for them, but he's ready. He's ready to go to the next level. And they need, I don't know, maybe a fresh voice as athletic director will be it. I'm a huge fan of Jean, though. I like her a lot and have always been a big fan of her and what she's done for women's athletics at that highest level and as a role model in a job that is mostly men. Like that, it means something, So it'll be interesting to see what happens from there.
Yeah,
So
Dionne Miller. Okay, Dionne Miller of ABC7 Chicago Sports is joining us right here on Second City Sports Zoom style, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. Dionne, of course, we all know that we had the tragic event, the tragic murder of George Floyd from a couple weeks ago. Of course, all the four pro sports leagues and most of the college teams have expressed their concern of racial injustice, and of course, everybody's been putting out statements and informing these coalitions. What do you think about the social activism among not just black athletes but white athletes as well, join the cause and trying to find a solution to
it's
our problems in
important.
society?
It's important conversations, guys. Like these are important things that we have not we don't talk about. And I don't think we realized that we weren't talking about them until this moment. And, you know, I don't know that all protesting has been done intelligently by some white young people who've just gotten involved. I don't know that they've really understood what they haven't understood things. I think it was obvious to me when like Drew Brees and his wife were so backpedaling on some of the things that they had said and said, I didn't understand before. And I think that what has been so eye-opening for white America is that these are people thought that they were, oh, he's kneeling because he's mad at the police. No, or doesn't respect our country. That wasn't what it was about. I think hearing Robert Quinn from the Bears and Akeem Hicks, oh my goodness, like just, it was, wow. To me, it was sad that we can't hug each other right now, but I feel like that's what I wanted to do. I feel like we needed to bridge that gap with those conversations. And it's been very, very important. And I've liked hearing some of the coaches say, absolutely, I will kneel with my players. It's not about the flag. It's about, this is a conversation we need to have. Those lives, of course, this is the one thing that's been hard for me is people are like, well, all lives matter. Well, yes, of course, but that's not what we're talking about right now. This is this situation where we're going to say Black Lives Matter, and we're going to stand together and say, let's pay attention to our brothers and sisters here. Like, let's not ignore this because it's an uncomfortable conversation, or it's something we don't want to talk about, or we haven't talked about. Let's step up and change that dialogue. And I think that it's been impressive to see athletes across the board say that these are my teammates, these are my friends, this is my community, and I'm going to stand with them right now. And I think that's been very powerful and important lessons for all ages.
I think about Lisa Akeem Hicks. I can only imagine what that was like for him, because I know that at first he didn't want to really be sort of open about it, but he did become very open. Are you finding that doing these Zoom meetings that the players and coaches are becoming more forthright within reason, with more of a connection?
Absolutely. I think that they're feeling that they can speak out more. You know, Akeem has said that. He's like, I didn't feel comfortable taking a knee because I thought my job was on the line. And some of the guys were like, it was my rookie year and I was new and I didn't know if it was okay if I stood for this or not. And you know, and it's not any, to me, like I have very, very good friends who are policemen, and I don't hate the police. Like, you know, that's not what I say, that's not what it's about. And I think that needs to be relayed and made very clear. But I do feel like it's opening that door for athletes to say how they really feel. And I loved that Akeem said when he went into that meeting with the Bears, he was skeptical. He's like, oh, great, this is just for like, you know, just for show. And it wasn't. It was real and it was authentic and it was what was needed. And I think we're seeing that from a lot of teams and from a lot of sports figures. And as much as we look up to them as role models and they don't necessarily want to be put on that pedestal, they speak and people listen. And I think it's been good. I really do. I think it can spark a change across the board.
Getting back to the Bears on the field, Dionne, as Lakeena brought up one of the names earlier, they picked up Robert Quinn during the offseason. They drafted tight end Cole Clement out of Notre Dame. What did you think about the moves for the Bears this offseason? And we'll get to this in a sec, but just to put it out there, they did trade for Nick Foles, in which Mitchell Trubisky was ticked off to keep it clean for our broadcast.
Let's keep it clean.
Yeah, no, it's right there. So.
I'm going to mention the draft. I think that for the first time, Ryan Pace didn't reach. He kind of took the right players at the right time. We didn't walk away going, North Carolina A&T, really? Like that's where you found somebody? Like we didn't say those things this year, right? It was much more streamlined across the board, made smart choices that everybody, I mean, for getting Cole Kmet and then Jalen Johnson, it both were thought to be first round picks. I think that was, you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like we didn't have a first round pick. We got first round talent. That's pretty good. So that was, I felt like that. I felt good about the draft and the guys that they brought in. As far as some of the offseason moves, Robert Quinn is brilliant because he is not only great off the field, but he's going to be that second attention grabber on the defense that you have to pay attention to him and Khalil Mack. And that is going to be what Leonard Floyd didn't bring, right? For however many years, for 3 or 4 years that he was here. So that is really great. And I'm a big Robert Quinn fan on and off the field. So that I feel really good about that and who they brought in the room. As far as Nick Foles, I think that it's his job. I don't know. Mitch said all the right things last week. He said all the right things, but he can say all that he wants to. It's going to come down to what he does on the field. And right now, virtual progress is not what they're looking for. They're not looking for Zoom meeting progress. They're looking for a quarterback who's going to lead them on the field and be the reason they win games. He is not the reason they win games. He's been the reason they've lost games, but he's not the reason they win. So we'll see what happens. I can't wait until they're able to get on the field so we can actually see how this quarterback competition unfolds. It'll be interesting. I'm a big Nick Foles fan too, as a person on the field and off. Same with Mitch. Like I've always been a fan of who Mitch is. And he does have leadership there. I mean, we talked to DiFilippo and he says he's got that command off the field. So we'll see.
She's still the show. She's still in the show.
So I've been saying on this show for the last few weeks, I thought they should have picked up Cam Newton, but we said to our audience that the Bears has been known as an organization to play things safe, and they did that to the textbook degree, picking up Nick Foles. You want to give Mitchell Trubisky competition, but you don't want to quote unquote scare her too much that he loses confidence and he loses his job right before this season starts. I think even though Cam Newton has the foot problem, assuming that he's healed right now, he's better than Mitchell Trubisky. Me personally, I do want Trubisky to succeed. I was actually one of the few people that said out loud that Mario Pace made a great move to go get him. That's your guy. You're going to do whatever it takes to go get him. Now, we've seen success for Trubisky here and there, especially 2 years ago when they made the playoffs, even though they was riding that high wave of the defense. But I think that Cam Newton is better than Trubisky. But I understood why the Bears did what they did and pick up Nick Foles, because one, he's cheap, and number two, you want to find out if Trubisky is the guy first, especially now not picking up that 5th-year option.
Absolutely. I think you're exactly right. They played it safe. They brought in somebody who wasn't going to mess with his head too much, because what have we learned about Mitch Trubisky? He gets in his head a lot and he gets thrown off because he's in his head. And so that's what they needed to do, is to bring somebody in that's competition, but isn't going to, like you said, scares. I don't know if that's the right word, but just kind of like that he's not looking over his shoulder, because he remains plan A. It's better for the Bears if he becomes the quarterback that they drafted him to be. That's better for the Bears all the way around. But it hasn't happened. Why didn't they? That's why they didn't pick up his option, So they can like him all they want. They like who he is. They want him to succeed. He has to be able to do it on the field, and we are still waiting.
Yeah, I've always felt that they should have picked Deshaun Watson, but again, that's just, I ain't trying to be petty here. But that's just me. But do you think there's going to be like a big terms of win differential between Trubisky and Foles? Should it, maybe if the Bears have a bad start, they bring Foles in, or vice versa?
Yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. I think that they're going to start with Mitch, see what, again, provided the season starts on time, but they're going to start with Mitch, see how he does, and then if he struggles, we have somebody do it who can do the job and knows the offense. And I think that was another reason they went Foles, because he has relationship with Nagy and he knows, what they're trying to do offensively. It's not a huge learning curve for him. And he's mature and he's experienced and he has a Super Bowl ring. I mean, gosh, you might not want to get in Mitch's head, but that's intimidating. And that's why he was upset, right? Because they brought in someone. So we'll see. But I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
Dionne Miller of ABC 7 Chicago Sports is joining us right here on Second City Sports Zoom as we talk Bears and other fun topics. Dionne, let's stay on the Bears for a minute and let's go to the offense. Now second-year running back David Montgomery out of Iowa State. He had a good rookie year last year, but head coach Matt Nagy was kind of stubborn to incorporate the run game into the offense last year. We saw David Montgomery had his moments. I think he still has a lot to learn as far as playing the running back position. What do you expect out of him in year two? And do you think the head coach Matt Nagy will incorporate the running game more into the offense?
I hope so. I think that's what makes the offense go, is when you have more than you're doing, you're more dynamic and you can use the running game. I think he has to take another step, but I think he's ready to. I really do. I think the offensive line was an issue last year. We couldn't stay healthy, could not keep 5 consistent guys. Kyle Long was all over the place, and they need consistency up front. That's going to make a big difference. But yeah, I do. I think that Montgomery's going to take that next step and be the draft pick that they chose him to be. I really do. I think he has that talent and ability and can look a little bit more like what Nagy wants in a running back, can kind of reflect that a little bit. And so obviously they didn't want Jordan Howard, so they got the guy they want, and this is what they're hoping to build that running game around. I liked what Juan Castillo talked about with the O-line and how that obviously predicates the success of the running game. So let's see what happens. But I do expect him to take another big step.
What about Allen Robinson? I mean, I think he's up for a big contract. Do you think he'll have a even better season this year? And do you think he'll get that payday?
I do. They love him, and he loves being a Bear, and he has been a really powerful voice in the locker room, in the community. So I think they want, and his success is good. His ability has been very impressive, and his ability.
It's okay.
Real life, you guys. His ability has been up there. His ability to be a number 1 top receiver has been there, and that's been really powerful for them and important for them. I couldn't be a bigger fan. Again, on and off the field, he's a lot of fun, but he's just a good person. But I do think he's going to get his payday. I do.
And speaking of head coach Matt Nagy, of course, he changed his entire offensive staff this all season. How important is year 3 for him? Because they finished the year at 8-8 last year. Let's be honest, it was 7-9. Some people would say 6-10, but that's a whole nother issue. How important is year number 3 for Matt Nagy?
It's pretty big. I mean, they've in his defense, he was given that quarterback, so that was not his choice. But this is his staff. This is a group that has had relationships with him and that he has kind of been allowed to build. I think it's big for him. I think it's an even bigger year for Ryan Pace. If Trubisky isn't that guy, I think the pressure really gets on the GM. I think they really before was a fluke. I don't think 8-8 was a fluke. I think that this is where they are, and he's learning on the job too. I like everybody. I think you guys are hearing that in my voice. I'm a huge fan of him. I have been for a long time. I covered him when he was the arena quarterback in Columbus, Ohio. So I've known him. He's consistent. He's the same person, and that's the kind of coach that they need. I like him. I think he's got a bright future as a head coach, and he's doing good things with that group, and the team really likes playing for him. And he's got a reputation for that. So I do think it's a big year for him, year 3. I think it's even bigger for the GM.
What about the defense? Do you think they could get back to being that top 10 or top 5 defense that we've seen a couple of years ago?
I do. Something to prove. I mean, you hear Khalil Mack is working out like he's got something to prove. Same with Akeem Hicks. Akeem did not like being injured last year, not being able to be that guy on the field. And we saw how much they struggled up front when he wasn't. And I think, to be totally frank, we got on that Khalil Mack bandwagon in 2018, and everybody was like, oh, he's so great. And he is great. He is great. But I think Akeem sat in the background and was like, you guys think it's all working without me? Come on now. And then saw that it wasn't working without him. And so that's what his motivation is too, to get back out on the field. He could not be hungrier to prove his value to the team. So, and how valuable, I think, to fans too, like how valuable Akeem Hicks is. And Pagano said, like, he speaks and everybody listens, but his presence is so valuable up front in the trenches and what he can do. And so him being healthy will help the defense. I think that they've got good guys across the board into the secondary. Kyle Fuller really proved very, very valuable the last couple of years. And so yeah, I'm excited to see what the defense can do. And Eddie Jackson, I mean, getting paid and earning, I mean, he earned it, he deserved it. And he's been really, really good too. So I'm excited to see how that unfolds and how this virtual not a traditional off season has happened. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't realize we were going to talk this long. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, that's okay. We having a good time with you, Dionne. That's what we would like about you. So don't apologize at all. It's our honor, our pleasure to talk to you. So we love it.
Oh yeah, this is fun. We love Noah's coming, like her Zoom debut, if you will.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Sid.
Okay, a couple more questions for Dionne Miller. Dionne, I'll follow you.
Go to work, you guys. I'm sorry. I didn't realize talk so long.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. You know what? We'll do this again one more time. This has been so much fun.
Yeah. Thank you, Dionne, for joining us. Great insight on all topics covered. Keep up the great work on ABC 7 Chicago Sports. You are queen of ABC 7 Sports. Thank you so much once again for doing this for us. We'll have you again. Don't be a stranger, and much continued success, okay?
Yes. Okay, guys, thank you for understanding. And yes, let's please do it again.
Absolutely. Bye, Noah.
Bye. Thank you.
No problem.
Take care.
Take care. That's a first. That's a first. That's a first. Yeah. We've done this. Yeah. We had kids crash interview. I love it.
We love the kids, don't we?
We love kids.
The kids, don't we?
Listen. She's a mother of 2 young kids. So yeah, we understand. We heard of her earlier. So yeah, this has been a lot of fun, Sid.
Yeah, now, I wanted to ask her about. She was part of the Gibbons 5K virtual training for charity this weekend. So you can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at DMillerABC7. Once again, at DMillerABC7 for all the information. She's an avid runner, and she does marathons for charity, and she's really great in the community. So she's doing great things, and she will continue to do great things. And we'd like to thank her once again for her time.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Like I said before, we had her on the D and David show for years, and now we have her on this show in her Zoom debut. She was great. Now, like I said, we love the kids as well. So
yeah, we love it. Oh yeah,
about that.
Yeah, I'll say absolutely. No one almost stole. She stole the show. She's a little cutie.
Exactly. We didn't mind that at all. So
no, we did. She's a little cutie. Listen, we get it.
Yeah, it's good to see family and have unity and togetherness, and that's what we've been preaching about for these last few weeks. So it was great times. Another great show in the books. Can't wait to do it again next week.
Yeah, listen, we covered a lot with Dionne today, so we'll have it up on the We Are Radio's website. You can listen to our show's podcast on Anchor, Spotify, basically anywhere where you get your Google Podcasts, anywhere where you get your podcast. So you can always catch us if you miss a show. You can go through that. Hopefully we'll be able to kind of do more of this for our own show, for our end, to kind of like maybe we can put the shows up for them, on our Facebook page. We'll still try to figure things out. Hopefully Jason will be back with us soon. I know he's been doing a lot of stuff, family stuff. So we know families, of course. So he's got 2 young boys himself. Yes. So I know he's been doing a lot of stuff there. That's why has been able to join us. But hopefully we'll have him back on with us soon. And listen, we're gonna have try to get more people to come on to talk about sports and race relations, because this isn't going away anytime soon.
Yeah. Also, shout out one more time to Cam Smith of CN100 and Watch Stadium at MSG. I know he was supposed to join us today, but he had a family emergency, so we'll reschedule him in the coming weeks ahead. So shout out to him as well. He was supposed to join us today, but we'll reschedule him in the coming weeks ahead. So shout out to him as well. One more time, thanks to Dionne Miller, the queen of ABC 7 Sports Chicago, for joining us today and involving one of her daughters as well. So, and one of her kids as well, which had to be her daughter. So we enjoy it. I can't complain. Not one thing today, Lakeena.
I know.
Not one thing, though. This is why we do. We love what we do, and for moments like that, you just can't complain.
Yeah, exactly. This is life, for all of us.
Exactly.
Zoom minis, in our home, some of us who have kids, you have kids running around, and our spouses are running around, and such. Yeah. So listen, we can't hate. I mean, she's a little cutie pie too, so we can't really complain about her crashing the interview. This is a sweetheart. So yeah, so listen, we got golf going on. You got the Breeders' Cup, like Dionne said earlier, going on tomorrow. So seems like sports is starting to kind of come back, little by little there, Sid. What are you expecting from this next week?
The one question I wanted to ask you, like we did in our last podcast, will baseball have an official deal on the table? I'm kind of afraid to answer that.
I'm
I was
afraid to answer that
last
myself.
week, but I just shake my head. I just do.
I can
I
just do
hope
the
we do, but I don't know.
I can just do the shrugs. Like I don't know. I mean, we thought we had something, but then it turns out, oh, we're right back to where we started. So they just need to figure it out. I mean, because like we've been saying, they're gonna get lost in the show once all the other sports starts to come back. So listen, baseball better get it together because it's not gonna be good if they don't.
Yeah, like you said, they'll be falling to the wayside if they don't strike a deal soon. It's got to be a deadline here. But I think on that note, Lakeena, we got to go. We'll leave it the baseball situation with the Michael Jordan shrug.
Exactly.
You did it
Exactly.
better than I did if you watched the
Well,
video.
listen, I think, I don't know. But you can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter, at Keena_McGee on the Instagram.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80, both on Twitter and Instagram. SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. You can read all of my articles at WeAreRegalRadio.com. That's WEAREREGAL Radio.com. As Lakeena mentioned earlier, you can listen to our podcast along with the Dean Davis Show and Dean Davis the Flip and Josh Hicks within the scope. You can listen to all those beautiful programs on WARR on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify and all of your podcast platforms. Search for WARR on Anchor to listen to all those fine programs as well.
All right, so we're gonna let's do it again next week, Sid.
Yes, we're gonna do it again. Hope we bring you on more interesting and intriguing guests to talk about the return of sports and a whole lot more.
All right, so for Sid, I'm Lakeena. Also, happy Father's Day to all the fathers, out there, or father figures. Yeah, so this is your day too. So try to maybe, the restaurants are open up a little bit. So do something nice for the dad in your life.
Yes. See you next week. Holla.
All right, see you. Peace.